ask you. Jubal read the letter. She knows what she wants. What does Mike think? He hasn't seen it. Jubal glanced at the picture. A type which in my youth we called stacked. Well, her sex is not in doubt, nor her agility. Why show it to me? I've seen better. What should I do? The letter is bad enough, but that disgusting picture. Should I tear it up? What's on the envelope? Just the address and return address. How does the address read? Huh? Mr. Valentine Michael Smith, the man from... Oh! Then it's not addressed to you. Why, no, of course... Let's get something straight. You are neither Mike's mother nor his chaperone. If Mike wants to read everything addressed to him, including junk mail, he is free to do so. He does read most of those ads. But you don't want him to see filth. He's innocent. So, how many men has he killed? Jill looked unhappy. Jubal went on. If you want to help him, you will concentrate on teaching him that killing is frowned on in this society. Otherwise, he will be conspicuous when he goes out into the world. I don't think he wants to go out into the world. I'm going to push him out of the nest as soon as he can fly. I shan't make it possible for him to live out his life as an arrested infant. For one thing, I can't. Mike will outlive me by many years. But you are correct. Mike is innocent. Nurse, have you seen that sterile laboratory at Notre Dame? I've read about it. Healthiest animals in the world. But they can't leave the laboratory. Child, Mike has got to get acquainted with filth and get immunized. Someday he'll meet the gal who wrote this, or her spiritual sisters. He'll meet her by the hundreds. Shucks, with his notoriety and looks, he could spend his life skipping from one bed to another. You can't stop it, I can't stop it. It's up to Mike. Furthermore, I wouldn't want to stop it. Although it's a silly way to spend one's life. The same exercises over and over again, I mean. What do you think? Jill blushed. Maybe you don't find them monotonous, none of my business either way. But if you don't want Mike's feet kicked out from under him by the first 500 women who get him alone, then don't interrupt his mail. Letters like that may put him on guard. Just pass it along in the stack, answer his questions, and try not to blush. Boss, you're infuriating when you're logical. A most uncouth way to argue. I'm going to tear up that picture after Mike has seen it. Oh, don't do that. What? Do you want it? Heaven forbid. But Duke collects such pictures. If Mike doesn't want to, give it to Duke. Duke collects such trash? He seems such a nice person. He is. But I don't understand. Jubal sighed. I could explain it all day and you still wouldn't. My dear, there are aspects of sex on which it is impossible to communicate between the two sexes of our race. They are sometimes grokked by intuition across the gulf that separates us, by exceptionally gifted individuals. But words are useless. Just believe me, Duke is a perfect knight, and he will like that picture. I won't hand it to Duke myself. He might get ideas. Sissy. Anything startling in the mail? No. The usual crop who want Mike to endorse things or peddle official man from Mars junk. One character asked for a 5-year royalty-free monopoly and wants Mike to finance it, too. I admire a wholehearted thief. Tell him that Mike needs tax losses, so how much guarantee would he like? Are you serious, boss? No, the Garniff would show up with his family. But you've given me an idea for a story. Mike was interested in the disgusting picture.
Audible hopes you have enjoyed this program. This is Audible.
Stranger in a Strange Land by Robert A. Heinlein. This book is read by Christopher Hurt. He grokked theoretically what the letter and picture symbolized, and studied the picture with the delight with which he studied each butterfly. He found butterflies and women tremendously interesting. All the grokking world was enchanting, and he wanted to drink so deep that his own grokking would be perfect. He understood the mechanical and biological processes being offered in these letters, but wondered why strangers wanted his help in quickening eggs. Mike knew, without grokking, that these people made ritual of this necessity, a growing closer, somewhat like water ceremony. He was eager to grok it. But he was not in a hurry. He failed to grok. He was sensitive to correct timing, but with Martian approach. Timing was accomplished by waiting. He noticed that his human brothers lacked his discrimination of time, and often were forced to wait faster than a Martian would. But he did not hold their awkwardness against them. He learned to wait faster to cover their lack. He sometimes waited faster so efficiently that a human would have concluded that he was hurrying at breakneck speed. He accepted Jill's edict that he was not to reply to these brotherly offers from female humans, but accepted it as a waiting. Possibly a century hence would be better. In any case, now was not the time, since his brother Jill spoke rightly. Mike agreed when Jill suggested that he give this picture to Duke. He would have anyhow. Mike had seen Duke's collection, looked through it with interest, trying to grok why Duke said, "That one ain't much in the face, but look at those legs." Brother! It made Mike feel good to be called brother by one of his own. But legs were legs, save that his people had 3 each while humans had only 2. Without being crippled, he reminded himself. As for faces, Jubal had the most beautiful face Mike had ever seen, distinctly his own. These human females in Duke's picture collection could hardly be said to have faces. All young human females had the same face. How could it be otherwise? He had never had trouble recognizing Jill's face. She was the first woman he had ever seen and his first female water brother. Mike knew every pore on her nose, every incipient wrinkle in her face, and had praised each one in happy meditation. But while he now knew Anne from Dorcas and Dorcas from Miriam by faces, it had not been so at first. Mike had distinguished by size and coloration, and by voice, since voices were never alike. When, as sometimes did happen, all 3 females were quiet at once, it was well that Anne was so much bigger, Dorcas so small, and that Miriam, bigger than Dorcas but smaller than Anne, nevertheless need not be mistaken for another if Anne or Dorcas was absent, because Miriam had hair called red, even though it was not the color called red when speaking of anything but hair. Mike knew that every English word held more than one meaning. It was a fact one got used to, just as the sameness of girl faces one could get used to. And after waiting, they were no longer the same. Mike now could call up Anne's face and count the pores in her nose as readily as Jill's. In essence, even an egg was uniquely self, different from all other eggs anywhere and when. So each girl had potentially her own face, no matter how small the difference. Mike gave the picture to Duke, and was warmed by Duke's pleasure. Mike was not depriving himself. He could see it in his mind whenever he wished. Even the face, as it had glowed with an unusual expression of beautiful pain. He accepted Duke's thanks and went happily back to his mail. Mike did not share Jubal's annoyance at the postal avalanche. He reveled in it. Insurance ads and marriage proposals. His trip to the palace had opened his eyes to enormous variety in this world, and he resolved to grok it all. It would take centuries, and he must grow and grow and grow, but he was in no hurry. He grokked that eternity and the ever-beautifully changing now were identical. He decided not to reread the Encyclopedia Britannica. Mail gave him brighter glimpses of the world. He read it, grokked what he could, remembered the rest for contemplation while the household slept. He was beginning, he thought, to grok business, buying, selling, and related on-Martian activities. The encyclopedia had left him unfilled, as he now grokked. Each article had assumed that he knew things that he did not. There arrived in the mail from Secretary General Joseph Edgerton Douglas a checkbook and papers. His brother Jubal took pains to explain what money was and how it was used. Mike failed to understand, even though Jubal showed him how to make out a check, gave him money in exchange for it, taught him to count it. Then suddenly, with grokking so blinding that he trembled, he understood money. These pretty pictures and bright medallions were not money. They were symbols for an idea which spread through these people, all through their world. But things were not money, any more than water shared was growing closer. Money was an idea, as abstract as an old one's thoughts. Money was a great structured symbol for balancing and healing and growing closer. Mike was dazzled with the magnificent beauty of money. The flow and change and countermarching of symbols was beautiful in small, reminding him of games taught nestlings to encourage them to reason and grow. But it was the totality that dazzled him, an entire world reflected in one dynamic symbol structure. Mike then grokked that the old ones of this race were very old indeed to have composed such beauty. He wished humbly to be allowed to meet one. Jubal encouraged him to spend money, and Mike did so with the timid eagerness of a bride being brought to bed. Jubal suggested that he buy presents for friends, and Jill helped, starting by placing limits, 1 per friend, and a total cost, not even a reciprocal filled 3 of the sum in his account. Mike had intended to spend all. He learned how difficult it was to spend money. There were so many things, all wonderful and incomprehensible. Surrounded by catalogs from Marshall Fields and the Ginza, Bombay and Copenhagen, he felt smothered in riches. Even the Sears and Montgomery catalog was too much. Jill helped. No, Duke would not want a tractor. Duke likes tractors. He's got one, or Jubal has, which is the same thing. He might like one of those cute little Belgian unicycles. He could take it apart and put it together all day long. But even that is too expensive. Mike, dear, a present ought not to be expensive, unless you are trying to get a girl to marry you, or something. A present should show that you consider that person's tastes, something he would enjoy but probably would not buy. How? That's the problem. Wait, I just remembered something in this morning's mail. She was back quickly. Found it! Listen to this. Living Aphrodite, a deluxe album of feminine beauty in gorgeous stereo color by the world's greatest artists of the camera. Notice this item cannot be mailed. Orders cannot be accepted from addresses in the following states. Pennsylvania's on the list. But we'll find a way. For if I know Duke's tastes, this is what he likes. It was delivered via SS patrol car, and the next ad boasted, "As supplied to the man from Mars by special appointment," which pleased Mike and annoyed Jill. Picking a present for Jubal stumped Jill. What does one buy for a man who has everything he wants that money can buy? 3 wishes, the fountain that Ponce de Leon failed to find, oil for his ancient bones, or 1 golden day of youth? Jubal had long forsworn pets because he outlived them, or, worse yet, it was now possible that a pet would outlive him, be orphaned. They consulted others. "Shucks," Duke told them. "Didn't you know? The boss likes statues." "Really?" Jill answered. "I don't see any sculpture around." "The stuff he likes mostly isn't for sale. He says the crud they make nowadays looks like disaster in a junkyard. Any idiot with a blowtorch and astigmatism calls himself a sculptor." Anne nodded. "Duke is right. You can tell by looking at books in Jubal's study." Anne picked out 3 books as bearing evidence to her eyes of having been looked at most often. She said. "The boss likes anything by Rodin. Mike, if you could buy one of these, which would you pick? Here's a pretty one, Eternal Springtime." Mike glanced at it and turned pages. This one. "What?" Jill shuddered. "Mike, that's dreadful. I hope I die long before I look like that." "That is beauty," Mike said firmly. "Mike!" Jill protested. "You've got a depraved taste. You're worse than Duke." Ordinarily, such a rebuke, especially from Jill, would shut Mike up, force him to spend the night in trying to grok his fault. But in this he was sure of himself. The portrayed figure felt like a breath of home. Although it pictured a human woman, it gave him a feeling that a Martian old one should be near, responsible for its creation. "It is beauty," he insisted. "She has her own face. I grok." "Jill," Anne said slowly. "Mike is right." "Huh? Anne?"